Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. Be quite nice. Have a good time. You'll be very evil. And you'll love that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentary.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And he used to say, "Hey, Greg Morgan," and he used to say, "Please call me Greg," and I wouldn't do it.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, SmackDown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cell.
And now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the pow.
Listen to the podcast. Subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're going to have a problem.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it now.
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
It is a beautiful day for a podcast. What's going on, guys? Good Mic Work Commentaries back at you with a Winged Eagle podcast. Been a while since we busted out a Winged Eagle on a weekend. Coming at you on your February 5th, 2022 Saturday. Hope you guys are having a great day. Figured today was a pretty good day to come up and do a podcast because it's been a busy week for me. I haven't been up here other than the AEW Dynamite watch-along on Wednesday and our Raw review on Monday, and a lot has gone down since then on a lot of wrestling news and a lot of upcoming wrestling news. So figured I would save everything, the Shane McMahon stuff, the Goldberg stuff, the Brian Kendrick stuff, the Elimination Chamber stuff, all that crap. We would save it for today, try to bust it out all at once on this nice, beautiful Saturday afternoon, at least where I live in San Diego, wherever you guys are. Hope you're having a great weekend so far. And we got a lot on tap for the menu today. We're going to get into, among other things, the big announcement, the Tony Khan mentioned last night he's going to have a big announcement. Basically, a new signing is what he's giving away. He's going to announce that this coming Wednesday, and whoever this person is going to be debuting on Wednesday Night Dynamite. So we're going to talk about that. We will talk about the big Shane McMahon release. He has gone from WWE, fired by his own dad. We'll talk about the circumstances surrounding that. Very interesting developments this week going on with Brian Kendrick. A lot going on with him. In a 24-hour span, it was reported that he was given his release from WWE and he was advertised for Dynamite against Jon Moxley, only to be pulled at the last minute after some very ridiculously stupid comments from about 10 years ago resurfaced and put AEW and Tony Khan in a very weird situation. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And this past week's Dynamite was fantastic with one of my favorite, probably my favorite AEW Dynamite main event of all time so far since the company has been around. It was old school, 40-minute match, and I thought it was really, really well done. Unfortunately, I don't think the ratings were quite as high as AEW were hoping for something like that, but I thought Dynamite was really fun. WWE also has recorded yet even more record profits, this time pulling in more revenue than ever in the company's history. Best financial year ever. We'll talk a little bit about that and how much money those assholes are making. We might poke a little bit of fun at Nia Jax and the latest stupid shit that she decided to say. Some interesting comments from Jade Cargill on Talk is Jericho regarding her talks and meetings with WWE prior to going to AEW. We'll backtrack a little bit, just touch on this past week's Raw, talk about the ratings, and a look ahead for the next, I think, 2 WWE Raws, or at least the next one is going to be on Sci-Fi. And we got a taped SmackDown coming up, too, this month. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit about Dynamite last week because I want to show love to that MJF and Punk main event. Also talk about the potential partnership between Bryan Danielson and Moxley that could be fun. And, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about last night's SmackDown, but not a lot. I didn't really watch much of the show. From the feedback I was getting from all of you guys on Twitter when I was at work last night is that the show was just a whole lot of nothing. So aside from Goldberg, challenging Roman in Elimination Chamber and Ronda picking Charlotte to face at WrestleMania, not a ton going on last night, so we're going to spend a very short amount of time on SmackDown, but we might spend a little bit more time on Rampage because it always blows my mind when they are able to cram in 4 matches into this 1-hour show, but they did it. 2 of them were title matches, and last night's Rampage was short and fun. So we'll talk about that, and we'll probably wrap things up by looking at the current Elimination Chamber card coming up in just a couple of weeks, 3 weeks from today, correct? Or 2 weeks from today, I'm sorry. Coming up in Saudi Arabia, 5 current matches announced for that. So that's pretty much what we're going to discuss. So before I do that, I want to head over here to the chat, say hello to everybody. Please encourage you also to smash that thumbs up button if you are here. And if you're not a subscriber, please do so. We're here all the time talking about stuff. Weekly podcasts, Wednesday night watch-alongs for Dynamite. We do classic pay-per-view watch-alongs every Sunday. Incidentally, we're doing one tomorrow since it is no football and Super Bowl is not until next week. We are going to watch WrestleMania 10. That's going to be the watch-along tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. The link is right in the description below. You can go down there now, click on it, save it, and give it a like for tomorrow. And we're going to watch Brett versus Owen, Shawn versus Razor in the ladder match, Yoko and Lex, and then, of course, Yoko and Brett in the main event, Piper, Perfect, and everything in between. One of my favorite WrestleManias of all time from Madison Square Garden, and 2 of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time taking place on this very same show, Brett and Owen and Razor and Shawn. So tomorrow is going to be fun. Mark your calendars. Let me say hi to the chat. Then I'm going to cruise over and say hello and shout out all of the current subscribers on the Patreon page, and then we will start busting out this wrestling news. Good to see Jay Lambo and Sam Tatanani and JD, Lil Justin, Rodrigo, and Reese Jones. Appreciate that $5 drop. Reese, I owe you a DM. Reese is going to be sponsoring a special Patreon video to be done during WrestleMania time that we're talking about right now. So that's going to be real fun. And thank you for that. I emailed you a more spaced out list for the video we're working on with some of my personal thoughts around each match. Great. I saw the DM on Twitter, but I have not seen the email yet, Reese, so I will check that out today and tonight. Thank you for that, dude, and I'm looking forward to putting that video together. It's going to be fun. Good to see Andy and Ben and David Brown. Happy you're here. Victor Colon is here as well. I'm glad to see some Monkey Wrenches here. Brian Yachiro is here, or Brian and Yachiro, excuse me. Emilios is here. Skull Vikings, Mike Witt. We got George Morris coming in with a $5 drop. Thanks, dude. Hey, Greg, how are you doing? Filed taxes Thursday. Big refund coming. KFC out of chicken. Looking forward to WrestleMania 10. Watch along tomorrow. Be safe. It sucks when KFC's out of chicken, man. I hate that because what the hell else are they going to serve? It ain't Kentucky Fried Beef. It's Kentucky Fried Chicken. That sucks. I'm glad you're getting a big refund, and now that I live in California, I have not gotten a refund since I lived on the East Coast. I owe every single year, it seems like, living out here in California, but that's the price of living out here, so it sucks. Anybody who gets a refund around tax time, I'm happy for you because refunds can be nice. Appreciate you being here, as always, George. Brandon is in the house, as well as Nikita, Michael Kumo, Sonic Plays, Mohammed, Margie. Who else we got? Zane, Naveed. We've got JJ. I'm not sure if I got you, and Isaac with the $2 drop. Appreciate that. Do you think Riddle will ride out on a camel again? Maybe. He did that last time. Didn't he do that last time, right? He might. I don't know if they want to. Well, yeah, WWE does tend to hammer things into the ground. So if they enjoyed the camel stuff, they might do it again. Yeah, he might. Well, I don't know, though. He's in the Elimination Chamber, correct? So Riddle riding out on a camel for the Chamber, not sure if all that's necessary, but who knows, man. We could see it, and I'd be into it. Why not? Casey, good to see you. Red Raven, Joshua, Mr. VIP, and that should do it for the shout-outs for now. We got to get going into all of the tasks at hand. Cruise over here to Patreon and thank a few people on the Patreon channel. Thank you to all current subscribers: MJ Parker, Kaylin Scott, Divine Ricks, JJ Legg, Darren Piper, Nikita Abalakin, Chris Miner, Deshaun Robinson, Super Fluffy Toaster, J Smooth 99, Martin Can, Apron Bump Podcast, Alan Carter, Nick Musser, Jimmy Anderson, K Dogs Kennel, Devlin Husband, Ryan Y, John Redifer, Claudio Clavadetster, Reese Jones, Barry MK, Josiah Blevins, John Riffle, Michael Kumo, Naveed, Keith Salyers, and Blake Moran. Thank you, as always, guys, for your months and many of you years and years of support on the Patreon account. You guys are the best. That should kill all of the pleasantries now. We can start getting into stuff. Like I said, please do some thumbs up smashing if you don't mind. I said hello to everybody, but didn't read a ton of comments. So let me just see if there's anything curious I need to answer right off the bat before we get started with the news. Yes, Rodrigo, we will be talking about Shane McMahon and all of that good stuff. We would not leave that out. Oh, yeah, we've got February 15th is the Vengeance NXT show. As of right now, I probably am not going to watch it unless I just happen to be home and happen to not be working. Then I'll probably check it out. But I've completely, basically eliminated NXT from my pro wrestling lineup. I no longer watch it, no longer cover it. I usually work on Tuesdays anyway, and I don't really want to come home and watch that shit. So I'll eyeball it, try to keep an idea or get an idea of what's going on there, but really not watching it anymore. Just not going to do it. It's just, I missed the black and gold. Not that they can't do a few good things in the splashed colored version of NXT. It's just I'm not going to sit around and wait for good things to happen. When they happen, I'll watch them. That's going to be my philosophy. What's up, Jose? Good to see you as well. And Brandon Anderson. Happy you guys are here. Ratnick. Oh, my God, Moldberg. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Oldberg. Jesus Christ. Well, we knew he was going to be coming back anyway, and we even talked about this, I want to say, either in the Royal Rumble review or this past week's Raw review. One or the other, the last two streams we talked about before the Goldberg, news was even announced. We were like, Saudi Arabia's coming up. Goldberg is probably going to be there. We know he's got some contractual dates left. He's not completely done with WWE, so if they are going to bring him in, Saudi Arabia is probably a good spot, provided he's not winning any championships. And I even said, one good match that I would actually be okay for him to have is against Roman Reigns, because I know I said Goldberg would never beat The Fiend, and he did, but I feel way more confident than Goldberg, although it's even the same month. Wasn't that in February when that happened? I really don't think Goldberg will be beating Roman Reigns for the title. Roman is going to be heading into WrestleMania to face Brock. It looks like, based on what they're talking in the chatter on TV as of late, that they probably are going to do title for title. So Goldberg winning just doesn't seem like an option. And if something like that happened, I would be blown away. So at least if they're going to bring Goldberg back, at least it's going to lose. He beat Bobby Lashley last time, which disgusted me. So at least this time he's going to go down. At least Roman Reigns not only gets a victory over Goldberg on his resume, but they make up for the WrestleMania match we didn't get a couple years ago when the pandemic started, when it was supposed to be Roman Reigns and Goldberg. So this is kind of the makeup match, and it's a much bigger deal now because this is a much different Roman Reigns. So this will be a lot of fun to see Roman put down Bill Goldberg, you would think. So we'll be getting into all that here in a minute. Let me backtrack all the way back to my news here. And we'll start at the top. Boy, I don't even know where to start. I kind of organized things the way I think we should discuss it, but I have one little thing that needs to be moved right up to the top of the line. And I knew something was up today because I've been seeing a few pictures on social media. One picture I saw was of Shelton Benjamin. He was holding up a phone, recording something, and up on the wall, it had like a big wedding banner, and I saw the last name Lee on it. I don't recall what the other last name was. And I'm like, I wonder if that's Keith Lee and Mia Yim. And sure enough, it was Keith Lee and Mia Yim married today. Lots of wrestlers in attendance for that. So saw a couple of pictures of the ceremony and one picture of them dancing. They look great together. Very happy for them. Congratulations to both. And hopefully, we see Keith Lee getting married today, and we might see him in just a couple of more days, as we're going to be getting into here in just a second. But very happy to see that they have now tied the knot. And congrats to the happy couple. We wish them nothing but the best. And I think AEW would be absolute fools if they did not get Keith Lee on TV as absolutely soon as possible. You know what I mean? So congrats to Keith Lee and Mia Yim. That made my day. Very good way to start off the weekend, to see two great people getting hitched. Congrats to the lucky couple, or the happy couple, excuse me. Divine Ricks, thank you for that $5. Do you think Tony Khan will sign? Who do you think Tony Khan will sign first to AEW in the near future? Dude, that's what we're about to get into now. Seba, good to see you as well. Good morning to you. Jose Lopez and Jet the Hawk all rolling up in here now. Happy you guys are here. Thumbs up button. Do it for me, guys. Hook me up. So we offered, for those of you just rolling in now, don't worry, you haven't missed much. I just did shout outs, answered the super chats, and we have offered congratulations to Keith Lee and Mia Yim, who got married today. Also, I plugged tomorrow night's WrestleMania 10 watch-along. The link is downstairs in the description, so cruise down there and save it for those of you just tuning in now. We're going to be watching that tomorrow night. It's going to be fun. But before we do that, we got to get through this podcast. And the big news, I think, that I really had at the top of my news segment here, section of my notes, was Tony Khan's big announcement, or huge announcement, that he is going to make this Wednesday on Dynamite. Now, he was already teasing this prior to Rampage last night, that he had a big announcement, and then during Rampage he made a couple of tweets saying that the big announcement is going to be coming on Wednesday, mentioning Forbidden Door. I think Forbidden Door is starting to get used a little bit too much, and now it seems like in Tony's mind the Forbidden Door might be being used to describe something that's really not that forbidden. I don't think a free agent should really be considered a forbidden door, and I think Tony Khan got a little bit ahead of himself based on his tweets. And I think what he's trying to say here basically is that this big announcement that he has on Wednesday isn't some sort of announcement of a tournament or a new championship or some sort of creative direction for the company. This announcement is a new signing. And he mentioned the Forbidden Door and then went on to clarify in another tweet that the big signing and Forbidden Door and big announcement are all kind of like one and the same. And he said this person is ending a contract with one company. He's coming in, closing one door, opening another, signing his contract on Wednesday, and making his debut the same day. So it sounds like this person is a recent free agent, either somebody whose 90-day has just come up, or maybe somebody that's been around for a little while, or maybe even someone from somewhere else other than WWE. The name Jay White has been tossed around a lot. So not sure who exactly this is going to be, but I kind of think it's funny that Tony Khan seems to think that anybody coming in now is just constitutes a forbidden door. And I don't really think it should be like that. The forbidden door is still unlocked. Anybody can go in it. It's just forbidden. These doors aren't necessarily locked, so to speak. But who do you guys think that it's going to be? I think one big name is possibly Keith Lee, who we just talked about a minute ago, got married today to Mia Yim. He's, I think, the most valuable free agent out there currently, even above Johnny Gargano, even above Karrion Kross. I think Keith Lee is the absolute first guy you should go for. In terms of the most recent releases, you could argue that maybe Wyndham Rotundo might be the guy you'd want to target first. But in terms of everybody else, I am getting Keith Lee there as quickly as I can, especially, when you think about AEW's situation and that little diversity problem they tend to have. Keith Lee is a star. WWE, the fact that they cannot figure out anything for this beast to do shows how atrociously inept they truly are. So he's a can't miss. He's somebody that you wouldn't even have to worry about building too much or trying to create a star out of. He is already a proven guy. He can work, he can go, he can talk. He's got the complete package. And hell, for a while there, even WWE fans thought that he could be a real test for a Brock Lesnar. So for AEW to get their hands on him, I think could be a win-win for everybody involved. And, and even if Keith Lee, is working unsanctioned matches with Orange Cassidy every week, it's still going to be better with what they had him doing in WWE, changing his persona, his look, his music, his ring gear, everything, not being able to figure out anything for him when they really just didn't have to do anything. Just like Karrion Kross, all they had to do was take what he was doing in NXT, move it to the main roster, and you're going to print money. And they squandered it, dropped the ball, and then bent over to pick up the ball and then kicked it down the fucking hill. They're idiots. So Keith Lee coming into AEW would be my first pick. You could also make a case for Johnny Gargano. A lot of people wanted to see him at the Beach Break show since Cleveland is in his hometown, and even he saw the love on Twitter, people asking, hey, why didn't you come out? So it feels like, people really want to see me, and he appreciated it. He said that he appreciated all the well wishes and everybody really clamoring, wanting to see him in AEW, so maybe he could turn up there. I mentioned Jay White. There was already, he did the thing on Impact where he, did something associated with AEW and stuff. So him coming in could be interesting as well because he already has a ton of history with everybody there who's also spent time in New Japan and stuff. So Jay White would be interesting, but maybe not a huge, monumental, earth-shattering signing like Tony Khan seems to be playing it up. So you would think with the way Tony Khan is talking, incidentally, he was also a guest on Bustin' Open Radio ahead of Rampage yesterday, where he said he's got more signings. He's in acquisition mode. He's going to be picking up a lot of free agent names, and there's going to be more coming in with every week, and he still has a lot planned and blah, blah, blah. So he's talking up, bringing in a lot more talent and really trying to build their roster to be as strong as possible. So you would think that anybody like Keith Lee, Gargano, Jay White, Bray Wyatt, even Strowman, any big name out there, you would think could basically turn up in AEW at any point. They could be there any Wednesday or any pay-per-view or maybe even any Friday. It just depends. But there is one other name that we're going to talk about in a minute that I guess we should at least mention in this, in the possibility of who this big announcement signing could be. What if it's Shane McMahon? We're going to talk about Shane McMahon in a minute. He was released on Wednesday from WWE. Well, I guess his release was reported and confirmed on Wednesday. Not sure exactly when the release went down. We're going to be talking about Shane McMahon next and the circumstances behind his release and what apparently went down with him at the Royal Rumble and some of the internal conflicts and controversies going on there with him booking the match and some of the shit that he was doing that might have led to his eventual release. And, I would be blown away if Shane McMahon walked out on Dynamite. Shane is just the type of guy to do it, especially like if, number one, he's a McMahon. So maybe some of these no-compete clauses and stuff don't really apply to McMahon's, or maybe they're not even written into the contract. Do you think WWE would have taken the time back 5 years ago when Shane came back and, was given a performer contract to write in a no-compete clause? There wasn't even an AEW back then. There was no competition. There was nowhere for him to go. So if they let him go, it stands to reason that he can probably go do something the very next day. I don't know, but you would think he probably could, based on his name. Maybe the other talent has got no competes and stuff, but Shane isn't expected to go work for another wrestling promotion, So I don't know if he would even have something in his contract like that. And if he's pissed for any reason, if this runs deep or if there's a true rift, maybe even in the family here, we don't know. And Shane really feels like he's done wrong. Hey, you know what? If the company is going to release their own fucking family, what loyalty do I have to show to them? I can just go to AEW and have some fun over there, because they'll probably bring me in, and that would be really interesting for the fans. We've already seen Shane on Nitro 20 years ago. So Shane McMahon coming in and working with the company, I think would be a Twitter-breaking moment. It would be a head-exploding moment. But you know what? As crazy as it would be, and the visual of a McMahon on a Dynamite, I don't want it. I don't want a McMahon or anyone associated. Even granted that Shane is the coolest of all the McMahons, I'll give you that. He's a cool dude. I still don't, even as cool as Shane is, I don't want anything with WWE's fingerprints coming anywhere near that company and infecting it. Like, I don't. Even though I like Shane, and I was completely against his most recent return. I thought he had no business in the Rumble. I think he has no business wrestling at this year's WrestleMania. But everything else, I mean, he's pretty much worn out his welcome after he started doing the Miz stuff and the Kevin Owens stuff. But even prior to that, I was pretty much okay with Shane being around because Shane can be fun. And even though Shane's not really a worker, he can do some pretty crazy and fun things out there that can be entertaining. But it's way past time for that to be a thing anymore. And I just don't want Shane around and didn't need him around. So now that he's gone, for him to go over to AEW, sure, he might bring some experience in terms of how to run a major wrestling company behind the scenes. Maybe he could be someone that could work side by side with Tony Khan, but I still don't want it. It's too close to WWE. That would be like, sending out the McMahons to infect everybody. It would almost like be creating their own monopoly. You could even talk about Shane McMahon. Maybe he's a mole to go destroy AEW. I just don't think it's a good idea. I think the very first night seeing Shane McMahon on Dynamite would be fucking crazy. But after a while, who really benefits from something like that happening, especially if Shane McMahon, gets a bigger role in the company or even maybe becomes an executive or something. I just don't think that's something we want to do. So I am probably one of the ones in the minority that does not want Shane McMahon to be this person. I don't think he is. I think it's a 1,000,000 to 1 chance, but I figured we at least got to mention it because Tony Khan, he might be just the guy to jump on an opportunity like that. Oh my God, could you imagine if we stole a McMahon, away from Vince, when they didn't really steal him because they let him go. But, it might be a good way for Shane to come out and cut a promo. Like, imagine if Shane went out on Dynamite and just ripped WWE in a promo. It would be nuts, but I still don't want to see that happen. And I should have put a link up to it, but I won't go too into detail here because I want to talk about the Shane McMahon stuff. But I was thinking just the other night before not the Shane McMahon stuff, but before Tony Khan announced that he's going to be bringing in a big signing and he mentioned the word Forbidden Door. Before this even happened, I think it was the night before last, I was up late and I was just thinking. I was thinking out loud and I was thinking back, or not thinking out loud, thinking in my head by myself. And I ended up putting these thoughts down into a Twitter thread. And I was thinking about back when Rick Rude was on Nitro and Raw on the same night. And that has been now 25 years. It'll be 25 years this year since Rude did that. And back in those days, Raw was taped every other week. They would run a live Raw on Monday. Then the very next day, they would tape the next week's Raw. And that format ran pretty much through 98 or 1999, I'm pretty sure. So I was thinking, that was such a unique situation because of the screw job. And then Rick Rude worked, the Raw taping. But then after that, the following week, decided that he was going to jump ship to WCW, which put him on a live Nitro, but it taped Monday Night Raw. And I was thinking that, we're never going to see something like that again, but I suppose maybe it is possible. And I think it would be fun for wrestling if we were to get something like that. Not a major defection where somebody goes on the other show and cuts a promo tearing apart the other company, but more of a lighthearted one or something that's not quite as mean-spirited. And all we need is to get a taped Raw or SmackDown or even a taped Dynamite. If one of these shows are taped, get some sort of performer that's not under contract. Maybe even just a jobber, an indie guy. We saw that one kid work a Raw and a Dynamite in the same week, but never the same night. So if you can get somebody in to maybe work a squash match, just some jobber getting squashed, on a taping, and then he goes over to Dynamite and works live, he could be on both shows at the same time. Or maybe it could be somebody that's like on their way out, but is leaving on really good terms and is somebody that, the company that they're leaving really respects. And it would even be more fun if AEW and WWE maybe even worked together to make it happen. Like, let's say Dolph Ziggler. He's been with the company forever, and he wants out, or his contract is coming up, and they're going to Saudi Arabia, and they got to tape a SmackDown. They got to, just like they're doing on February 18th, the day before Elimination Chamber, SmackDown's going to be taped because they can't run a show here in the U.S. and then one in Saudi Arabia in the very next day. So maybe on the taping, you get Dolph Ziggler on the last night of his contract to work a match on SmackDown. He'll lose. Then his contract is up. He signs with AEW immediately. He shows up on Dynamite, on Rampage. That's what it is. And he could be on Rampage, and then it would be like he would be like 1 hour. It's about as close as you could get it. You could never do it on the same night, but you could get it, or on the same time, but you could, put it an hour after. So then you'd have to have like a live Rampage or something like that. Or you could even do it on the taped Dynamite the following week. Well, no, that's not going to work either. I'm trying to figure out how you could do it to where you could actually have a guy do something similar to what Rick Rude did, but instead of it being mean-spirited or you attacking the other company, maybe the two companies work together to make it happen so it's something cool for the fans to see. I mean, everybody would benefit. It might even just give a little boost to pro wrestling as a whole if Dolph Ziggler lost a match on SmackDown and then the very next hour, he's on Rampage cutting a promo, maybe even a little nod to Rick Rude, maybe talking about his 15 minutes. Not necessarily trashing WWE and calling it the Titanic, but maybe a little nod to Rick Rude's promo. The fans were like, that was so cool. Who would have thought we'd see something like this in modern times? WWE and AEW had a couple of phone calls where they kind of worked it out to where nobody would get buried or anything like that, and it would create a little bit of buzz for pro wrestling as a whole, get Twitter talking, and get the fans talking about maybe a possible partnership or working agreement between AEW and WWE when that really wouldn't happen. It would be like AEW and WWE working together without really having to work together, but it would be enough to get the fans talking. It's just like when WWE releases a bunch of people, what do we all say? They're positioning for a sale. So if they did something to where WWE and AEW just had a little bit of crossover there, it would be enough, I think, to create chatter to where the fans could be like, could we see more from them? Maybe we'll see something this Monday. Let's tune into Raw. Maybe we'll see something this Wednesday. We'll tune in Wednesday. I don't know, just a thought. I think it could be fun to give some sort of a nod like that back to the past, even though you can't do quite what Rick Rude did. Because I don't even think he wasn't, like, that would have been crazy if he was even on in the same segment. Was he on in the same segment? He might have been. So if they could do something like that, who knows? It might be something to, make the fans realize that it's different this time, that you can have two competing companies that even will trade shots at each other just for fun. But at the end of the day, it's not a fight to the death. At the end of the day, nobody has to die. You can have two competing wrestling companies doing similar yet vaguely different things, and both can survive. And if these companies cannot hate each other, they can compete and, like I said, take shots. But I don't think you want that deep-rooted hatred that was there during the Monday Night Wars when you had Bischoff literally trying to put them out of business. I think it's much better for the fans if you have competing companies that don't want to kill each other, because when one company inevitably needs a favor from the other, who's going to benefit from that favor? We are. WWE might loan them some footage for an Owen Hart tournament, or AEW might loan them a legend for the Hall of Fame, something like that. When they work together and one needs to give a favor to the other, the fans are going to be the ones that are probably going to benefit from that the most, because we're going to look at that and say, that's fucking cool. So who knows who this person is, but Tony Khan is bringing in some new name. He's considering it a Forbidden Door-ish type of signing. But, to me, there's only a couple of names that I think would be worthy of this huge hype that this announcement is bringing in, and that would be either a Bray Wyatt or a Keith Lee, or a Shane McMahon. Anybody else will just be, oh, that's cool, but it's not going to be like an earth-shattering announcement to me. So sometimes I worry that Tony Khan gets a little bit ahead of himself and he gets a little bit too excited, and then he might reveal more than he actually should, to where he has to clarify or backtrack, and then by the time he's fucking done talking, when the debut or the announcement happens, it's a letdown. So that's what I worry, that he does not, get too excited about some of these things. Play it cool, Tony. I like Tony Khan. I think, I don't understand why Tony Khan gets such hate and heat from people, because we need someone like him. Wrestling needs like this dorky guy that might talk a little bit too much, and he doesn't come off as somebody that's just like vindictive or, has a lot of even though he's a billionaire, he doesn't just come off as this cutthroat fucking asshole. He seems like kind of a quirky guy, kind of a goofy type of nerd, and honestly, that might make the best type of wrestling promoter. You don't need some, big fucking psycho like Vince McMahon walking around going nuts about everything, changing his mind every 5 seconds, very temperamental, fucking bipolar or whatever else. Tony Khan is a weird little guy, and he seems to be completely all in on this in terms of, being very hands-on with the wrestling promotion. He's not some millionaire or billionaire that's just sitting back letting other people run it, people who have no experience in wrestling. That's the way WCW ran for a lot of years. A lot of people in that company, the people that were in charge of making major decisions, had no wrestling experience at all. And I always thought that fucking sucked, because if you have people with no wrestling experience at all, they're not going to understand or have any idea possibly what the fans want. And now we're starting to see that in WWE, where they are hiring writers who don't know the names of the champions. So having somebody like Tony Khan, who is a little weird and might say some things that he might regret from time to time, I actually think that's good. You don't want a completely normal, stable, sane, clear-thinking person to be a wrestling booker or wrestling promotion owner. You want this person to be a little nuts. It worked for Vince McMahon. He's batshit insane. So you want a guy that's a little out there, and I think Tony Khan is out there. And that can not be a bad thing. That can be a good thing. It's done enough to allure a heck of a lot of big names over to that company. They don't seem to be too concerned with the guy who's paying them. So what the fuck is the fans' problem? You know what I mean? If you got a professional and a well-traveled veteran, arguably the greatest wrestler in the world currently as we speak, Bryan Danielson, willing to sign a contract and work for these people, what the fuck is Jimmy Shitbrick, who's working at goddamn Popeyes? What do I give a shit about his opinion of Tony Khan? Fuck you. What do you know? Dick. I'd rather listen to the professionals, please. So if you got people like that willing to work there, I don't know why the fans have such a fucking problem with everything. You know what I mean? So tune in on Wednesday. We'll be watching it here on YouTube live together to find out who Tony Khan's big announcement is. Is it Keith Lee? Is it Johnny Wrestling? Is it Jay White? Is it Shane McMahon? Is it Bray Wyatt? Did I say Bray Wyatt? I think I did. Could be Karrion Kross or Killer Kross, I suppose. But right now, guy on the top of my list for AEW in terms of, I think, how it could help the roster would be Keith Lee, because it could help him in a lot of ways. So I'm voting for Keith Lee. Hopefully, he's the guy. Before we get into the Shane McMahon stuff, let me cruise over here and knock out a couple super chats that were coming in while I was talking. One of them is from Victor Cologne. Thank you for those $2. What if Roman gets DQ'd against Goldberg and kills him? Well, if there's one country he can get away for, one nation he can get away for, with it in, it would be Saudi Arabia. They could do something like that, maybe kind of a repeat of what they did with Seth and Roman, right? At the Rumble. And then Roman could just wear out Goldberg. But then I worry that will bring Goldberg back, and we're going to get another Roman Reigns and Goldberg match. I'd rather have it be a victory. If there's a DQ and something similar to what we saw with Seth and Roman at the Royal Rumble, that means we're going to get another match. I don't want that. Roman, spear and pin, Superman punch and pin Goldberg, spear him, whatever the fuck you got to do. Just end him. Even better, guillotine him to sleep. I could see that. They could probably do that finish. Goldberg wouldn't submit, but he might pass out. So we will see. Jeff Hardy, that's a good option as well. Juice Robinson is another free agent. Not Steve brings up a good point, although I don't know if Juice really is going to be the signing that's going to shake wrestling to its foundation, like Tony Khan seems to be hinting at. But Jeff Hardy, you would think, is also going to have a 90-day, which is probably not completely up yet either. So I would say in order to satisfy the hype that Tony Khan has been giving us, I say it's got to be a Bray Wyatt or a Keith Lee or a Shane McMahon or maybe a Gargano and Jay White. Those are really the only names floating around there right now that I would consider big enough to make a statement like that. Or Okada. However, Khan alluded to the fact that this person is going to be signing a contract on Wednesday, and I don't think Okada is free and clear from New Japan, unless there's something going on there. So, and there's a working agreement and there's a talent trade or exchange or something. But Khan made it sound like this person's signing a deal with AEW. So I'm not sure if it's going to be Okada, but Okada might leapfrog everybody. I might put him ahead even of Keith Lee, because that would be cool. Luigi, Raw Gaming, appreciate that $10 from you, man. Do you think with all of the pickups Tony is planning, I feel he'll run into the same problem WWE did when they hoarded all the top talent? No, I don't. I don't consider AEW's roster to be really that bloated. I consider a bloated roster to be what WWE had prior to releasing 120 names in the last 2 years. They released more names than AEW has on their whole entire fucking roster. So yeah, they're bringing in a lot of names, but I also think that when AEW started up, they signed a lot of talent because there wasn't a ton of talent out there because WWE was still in talent hoarding acquisition mode. So I think a lot of those early contracts, you know, the Peter Avalons and the Marco Stunts and guys like that are probably slowly going to be falling off. That's just the nature of the beast. Your talent roster is going to get better. Because I remember when AEW started, people were making fun of the talent roster, saying, oh, look at some names of fucking morons, and there's nobody knows who these guys are. You know, AEW's done a good job of establishing to the fans who these people like MJF are, Darby Allin are, and guys like that, creating their own homegrown talent while surrounding themselves with already established talent. And once WWE started cutting a bunch of people, that made a lot of talent available. So I think that you can't not sign a Keith Lee, you know, because there's a lot of people on your roster. You got to bring a Keith Lee in. You know, there's going to be some people who are going to maybe lose spots. A lot of the Dark and Elevation workers might not see a whole lot of Dynamite and Rampage action. That's just the reality of it. But I don't think that they're to the point where they have too much talent. It's, you know, it's the roster, I think. I don't know what the exact number is, but I don't think it's too over the top yet. I think fans think that because they see signings, you know, they see one guy coming in like, oh, there's no room. And I'm like, well, there's plenty of room. Look what WWE did. Granted, they had 3 shows and, you know, 3 different rosters and stuff, but I think AEW will work on being able to manage all this talent and make sure they have enough time for all of their top talent. They're going to have to really work on that, and they will evolve and get better at that as time goes by. But I think you want to sign the Keith Lees and the Garganos and the Wyndhams, and you might have to let the Marco Stunts go, you know, and the Big Swoles go and people like that. That's just nature of the beast, you know. But yeah, I don't think they're there yet. I think if they just keep signing talent and they bring in 100 more wrestlers over the next 2 years and they don't release anybody, then yeah, we might have a problem. But right now, I don't consider them too bloated, but they could be getting there. I ain't gonna lie. What if it's Jim Cornette? I doubt it. That would be funny if it turned out to be Jim, but I don't know why. I mean, they would have to offer him enough money, and then he would have a hell of a lot of explaining to do because, you know, Jim Cornette gets to make a pretty decent living by sitting on his ass in his house doing a podcast like a lot of us wish we could do. So for him to go into AEW, he's going to have to explain to his hate-listening audience that literally, imagine people do this, grown adults do this. They tune into his podcast just to listen to him shit on the show that they have decided that they hate because of the what people say to them on social media. That's an amazing waste of time. So he's going to disappoint a lot of those people if he then signs a contract with them and then comes into work for AEW, and then all of his fucking idiotic listeners will be, well, I thought you hated him, and then they're not going to know what to do. They're going to be mad at him maybe for betraying them, but then they might rationalize it as, oh, he's using them for money, and then they're all going to be on the joke or something. I don't know. But Jim Cornette certainly would be interesting, especially if they did something with like him and Dan Lambert, because I cannot fucking stand Dan Lambert, and I would take Cornette in AEW over Lambert any day of the week. So it could be, but I don't think it's Lambert. I just don't. We have not yet talked about Shane McMahon. That's the next thing on our list today is Shane McMahon's release from the company on Wednesday. Now, we just got done talking about AEW's potential new signing. Maybe even that person could be Shane McMahon. I said I want nothing to do with that. I don't want a McMahon in the same state as AEW, much less the same building or working there. I think that would just be bad news for everybody, even past the initial debut, which would be cool and surreal. I don't think it would do anything really to benefit wrestling as a whole if McMahons start infiltrating AEW, even if it is Shane. But Shane McMahon could be doing something now that apparently he is gone from WWE. Now, this was reported on Wednesday and confirmed by Meltzer and Satin and Sapp and all those guys pretty much said that it's a done deal. Now, we talked about Shane McMahon on the Royal Rumble review, or no, maybe the Monday Night Raw review is what it was. Raw review on Monday, because reports were circulating that Shane McMahon was one of the people that helped put together this year's Royal Rumble match, a match that Shane McMahon was involved in. And there was some chatter behind the scenes that Shane McMahon had booked a lot of that match and a lot of that match around himself and wanted to be in at a specific spot that could highlight him. And there were a lot of changes to the Rumble. Vince McMahon vetoed a couple of things. Brock Lesnar even got mad about something. Shane McMahon at one point had Seth Rollins in this match after the beating he took from Roman, and there was a lot of changes that made everything feel very clusterfucky, and we could feel it in the match. It was one of the worst Royal Rumble matches in terms of excitement that I could remember in a long time. You know, the order of the entrance was nothing special. The theme music is so bland and generic now, you didn't even know who was coming out. And there were really no big surprises. What were the surprises? We got Shane and then like one other surprise, and it wasn't even that big of a surprise. So no Forbidden Door stuff, no jaw-dropping return. Holy shit, I did not see that coming. Nothing like that. This thing was basically booked for Brock Lesnar to come out and win the Rumble so he can now challenge at WrestleMania, and it just didn't come off very well. And then the reports were that a lot of the reason why it didn't come off well was because of how it was booked and the changes made and some of the shit that Shane had set up for this match. So I even released a mic drop on this, talked about Shane McMahon's potential heat, and if he's going to be around and on TV now during WrestleMania time, who the hell is he going to work with at WrestleMania? And I thought the only guy that really made any sense was Austin Theory, but even that, is that a match we really want to see? It's going to benefit Theory. Theory will probably go over. You could even put Vince McMahon in the corner of Austin Theory, or maybe in a neutral corner and he goes with the winner, or maybe he officially makes Austin Theory his adoptive son and disowns Shane. I don't know. If they did something like that, then I was like maybe open to it, because at least, you know, it's not going to give the impression that Shane's in there necessarily taking up a spot. He's using the Shane McMahon name to get a guy like Austin Theory over. Okay, maybe I can live with that. But we didn't even get a chance to get that far, because on Wednesday, it was announced that Shane McMahon was released. And a lot of it was potentially due to what went down at the Royal Rumble. And I'm really curious how heated things got. Is there really some issues between Vince and Shane McMahon? I mean, are they... and obviously their professional relationship is probably different than their personal one, but was this enough to where there was actually, a confrontation and there was a battle going on behind the scenes, or a power struggle or whatnot? We heard about Vince and Brock both taking issues with what Shane McMahon had planned and what went into these reasonings. And we don't even really truly know the extent of this release. If it's the release from his performer contract, he might have some completely different contract for whatever other roles he has in WWE. But if he has a performer contract and that was what he was relieved of, then maybe he could still be with WWE in some capacity. Some in the company have even said they expect him back somewhere down the road, but maybe they have just decided to halt whatever plans they had for Shane for the time being, and then if there's a time and place to bring Shane back down the road, they will do so. Fightful Select elaborated a little bit more on this today. This article just came out today on Shane McMahon and a little bit more information on it. So I'm going to read this article to you. Fightful has learned more about some of the issues surrounding Shane and the Royal Rumble. Fightful spoke with several people close to the Royal Rumble match who uncovered some of the logic behind Shane McMahon's pitches or lack thereof. Several sources have indicated that Shane McMahon specifically wanted to go in a spot that would highlight him, with one even mentioning that he pitched the number 1 spot. However, we're told that Vince McMahon personally came along and said that he'd be making changes to the match and wouldn't be doing much of what Shane laid out. We were told that when Vince McMahon learned of Shane's plans, he wasn't happy about them, and neither was Brock Lesnar. Shane was insistent on seeing them through, which didn't end up happening. We're told of one particular humorous situation, as Shane McMahon was actually supposed to be number 29 and Orton number 28, which got reversed. Those near the situation say and heard Shane McMahon reacted hastily, and Orton pretty well informed him that he would in fact not be entering to Shane McMahon's theme, so Shane probably needed to go out there when his number was called. So For some reason, Shane wanted to come in at 29. I can't tell if they played the wrong theme music and then Orton's like, well, you just got to go, buddy. Or if he just told Shane, this is what's happening. That whole situation is really weird. I always thought, and I guess I was always of the hope that Shane McMahon was, the less annoying McMahon behind the scenes in terms of insisting on doing really stupid shit. I always thought Shane McMahon had a little bit more creative of a head on his shoulders than his dad in a lot of ways. Even with the Raw Underground stuff that didn't work out, you could see that his head and his ideas were kind of in the right place. You're trying to do different things. You're trying to offer different spins on wrestling and trying to, think a little bit outside the box because everything in the box has been done 15 times. So I think that I always liked that about Shane, but it sounds like he's got a lot of his dad in him where he just gets this idea that this is going to work and this is going to be great when everybody around you is saying, this is not so great. So now you've got one guy with a really bad idea being vetoed by another guy who has nothing but bad ideas. This is just a recipe for disaster. And apparently, based on everything that went down here at the Royal Rumble, that really was the catalyst that said, okay, we got to let Shane McMahon go, and him no longer being with the company. Like we talked about earlier, we don't know the extent of which he's no longer with WWE, if it's a performance contract that's gone and he's still there in some capacity, or if he is gone completely, or even if there was a major falling out and he's no longer talking to Vince McMahon or Nick Khan or anybody else there or a sister that he's associated with, and he's completely gone, and now he's pissed, and he realizes that from a contractual standpoint, legally, he can do whatever he wants. If all of those are the case, if there was a bad falling out, if he is free and clear contractually and legally to do whatever he wants, we can't rule out Dynamite. I just think that no, let's not do AEW Dynamite. So anyway, that's the latest on Shane McMahon. We'll keep an eye on the situation, see wherever he turns up. Hell, maybe he could even just make a cameo at WrestleMania and just show up there in a match randomly, and that would do enough to probably shock the fans a little bit as well. You know what I mean? So, yeah, and Ratnick, you might be right. We've heard all this negative stuff. However, we did hear that stuff prior to Shane's release. There has been a lot of people who, probably rightfully so, feel that WWE are kind of leaking and releasing these stories after somebody is released about them being hard to work with, like Bray Wyatt or whatever, just to try to save face a little bit. So maybe they were doing this ahead of time with Shane and getting the story out there that Shane was fucking with the Rumble. That way, when they let him go, they would seem justified. But I think the fans don't really have Shane's going to be fine. He's not a guy that, when WWE fires a wrestler, a young wrestler who's been there for 8 years and they did dick with, and now they're out on their own trying to get indie bookings. These are people's livelihoods. These are people trying to make a living in wrestling that probably haven't made a ton of money who you feel for. Shane McMahon, he doesn't need any money. He's working for fun at this point. So I'm not really, that sympathetic towards Shane in terms of, oh, he's lost his job. No, Shane's going to be fine. So I don't really care from that aspect, but, maybe WWE is putting that out there a little bit to make the pill easier to swallow. I don't know, because a lot of fans do really like Shane McMahon. I'm one of them, but I just have no need or use to see him in the ring now in 2022. That's for sure. Let me see where we are. Lost my chat there. There we go. I want to knock out another super chat, and then we're going to get into the WWE earnings call, Brian Kendrick, a little bit about Jade Cargill, and then we will kind of run through Rampage and SmackDown before we wrap up the podcast for the day. Again, I would really appreciate a thumbs up button. If you guys could hit the like button for me, I would appreciate it. Let me cruise back up here and knock out a very nice super chat from JJ Leg. Thank you for that $5 earlier, dude. It could be Toni Storm. Teeny Storm, I like that. She would be a huge addition to the women's roster. Also, Seth for Mr. Money in the Bank to cash in on Roman. Hey, I don't hate either one of those announcements. Toni Storm would be great. Not sure about her release, though. If she has a 90 days, I don't think we're at that 90 days yet. I'm not sure. And again, Toni Storm, I fully expect her to be there unless for some reason she'd just rather be back home in Australia. To come into AEW, she would really help improve that roster a lot, a women's roster that has already improved greatly in the last couple of years. But again, I don't know if she would be the name that Tony Khan is referring to this Wednesday. He's making it seem like it's a bigger name than this, than even somebody like Toni Storm, even though Storm would be awesome whenever she does show her face there. Seth winning Money in the Bank again, I'm into it, totally. Whether he cashes it in on Roman, I don't know. Roman would make the good story based on what happened with them at the Royal Rumble, but you're going to have to get a title belt back on Roman if he does drop his title to Brock or retains it against Brock. That's still up in the air. And maybe he drops it to Seth Rollins. It's a shame that there's not a Money in the Bank before Rumble, and you could do Seth crashing Roman and Brock again. You could maybe still do that. I mean, the fans would probably see it coming, but you do Roman and Brock at WrestleMania. You do something in the match, and I know fans are going to fucking hate this. You do something in the match where maybe Brock leaves for a little while, but he comes back and he challenges. You do the match again. Whether Brock wins or loses, I don't know. But you do it one more time. One final time at SummerSlam. And it's Brock and Roman main event, and you recreate WrestleMania 31. And Seth comes out, cashes in, wins the title. That might be fun. I don't know. But that's way down the road. But I do like the idea of Seth winning the Money in the Bank. Much like the Rumble, I don't subscribe to the belief that it has to every single time go to some young upstart talent or somebody on the cusp of stardom. It's nice when that happens, when guys like Big E, who haven't been champion yet, wins the briefcase and then becomes champion. That's always nice. But you can have a Randy Orton, a John Cena, or a Seth Rollins win this briefcase. It's not a big deal. And if Seth did win it again and carried that thing around, Seth with his bedazzled suits and a fucking bedazzled briefcase, take my money. WWE. Hell yeah, JJ. I am into that. Wow, I got a $50 drop in here. Let me thank Zane in 1 second. But before I do that, Rodrigo Martinez, appreciate the $2, my friend. Timothy Tucker or Harry Smith to AEW this Wednesday. Maybe Thatcher is what you're talking about. Would love to see Timothy Thatcher. He probably only has that 30-day. Harry Smith having any no-compete at all is horseshit because he didn't even really work. He worked a couple of dark matches, didn't he? So I can't believe he even has a no-compete, but I would love to see Harry come in and maybe work the Owen Hart Cup. Either one of those guys on Wednesdays, though, Rodrigo, not sure. Or this coming Wednesday. I'm sure they could be in and get signed at some point. Not sure if it will necessarily be this Wednesday. Dude, Zane G, I appreciate that very generous $50 super chat from you, man. Thank you so much. Hey, good mic work. My apologies for not keeping up with your podcast. I was in the hospital all last month due to COVID. Believe it or not, I am still listening to the WrestleMania Memories video. Your videos keep me strong and motivated. Man, I am sorry to hear that. You were there all last month due to COVID. Man, I really hope you are feeling better. No sweat on the podcast. I didn't realize you haven't been keeping up with them too much because I know I see your name in the chat quite often. But thank you for that super chat, dude. Hope you feel better and glad that that WrestleMania Memories video is still keeping you entertained after all these years. That was like a re-upload. I had like 1 million views on the first one, but I used a little bit too much footage and it got pulled down, so I had to re-upload it with some stills instead. And it's still up on YouTube and getting views to this day. So I'm glad that you're able to enjoy that. Hopefully you can hang out with us on Sundays between now and WrestleMania. We're going to be doing a lot of WrestleMania watch-alongs, and we start with WrestleMania 10 tomorrow night. So Zane, as always, my friend, thank you very much. I cannot remember if you are on Twitter or not. If you are, hit me with a DM and make sure that I'm following you and all that good stuff. Appreciate it, man, and feel better. All right, so we knocked out Shane McMahon. Why don't we talk about our friend Spanky? Oh, my God. I'm just going to briefly talk about the Brian Kendrick stuff because I only got a chance to briefly mention it during the watch-along on Wednesday because all of this stuff went down like an hour before Dynamite went on the air. So everything seemed to happen at once. We had heard that Brian Kendrick had asked for his release. We had heard about that, but then heard nothing more. Then it was reported, I saw it by Fightful, I think a lot of people had confirmed the story, that WWE had in fact granted Kendrick's release, I guess back in December. So he probably had that 30-day no-compete already run its course, and he is free and clear. That was all basically announced the same day as AEW announcing that Brian Kendrick is going to be booked in a match on Dynamite against Jon Moxley. So I was like, holy shit, this is great. Kendrick, I know, has been working in NXT. He's in his 40s now. He's a veteran. He's been working there as a trainer, maybe a coach, producer, agent, whatever, and he decided to ask for his release. Now they're bringing him in, and I first saw that, I'm like, hell yeah, Mox and Kendrick, that's going to be fun. Random, a match that I wasn't expecting to see 2 days ago. That should be cool. Well, of course, because we are in the middle of what I call the stupid war between these tribalist idiots everywhere around the wrestling world, you start having people having a huge problem with like a really cool random match being advertised for Dynamite. AEW announces Mox and Kendrick, and I'm like, and what I think, like a normal English-speaking, ass-wiping, clothes-dressing, chewing with my mouth closed human, I just look at that and I say, that's pretty cool. I'll be looking forward to that. But on the other side of the coin, you have the, unstable nut jobs that have a huge problem with everything and take all of this shit in wrestling so incredibly serious that if they're an AEW hater, they're going to find a way to have a problem with this. Whoa, they're bringing in Brian Kendrick. Whoa, they're just signing another WWE guy. Any of that shit that's on like that typical AEW hater bingo card, the same repetitive phrases they say over and over, you start seeing all that. I'm like, why would anybody even care enough to tweet displeasure with a random match advertised for a weekly Wednesday show? It's a match that I don't think we've ever seen. Might be fun. Moxley's going to hit him with a paradigm shift and pin him. Not a big deal. Well, it's a big deal to the fans, to the point where they start getting uppity, up their own ass, start fighting with each other, and then people decide to dig up, I guess now 10-year-old comments from Brian Kendrick saying some pretty jaw-droppingly stupid shit to the point where I don't even want to repeat it. But it's basically questioning the validity of the Holocaust, fucking lizard people, and all sorts of just crazy out there conspiracy theories, Sandy Hook stuff. I mean, it's bad. It's bad to the point where I don't even want to discuss it bad. So these have been comments that a lot of people knew about or maybe forgot about that never seemed to affect him during his time in WWE because nobody really cared to dig them up because nobody gave a shit, I guess. But now that it involves this AEW and WWE war, because of this, these comments got dug up. They made the rounds on social media, and when you listen to them, you're like, holy fuck. And it just blows my mind how people can be this stupid and believe things to this degree. And if you are one of these crazy conspiracy nuts that literally believe that Jews are lizard people, maybe that's just something you should keep to yourself in your head and not say on camera for it to bite you in the ass years later. This is not cancel culture. This is fucked up shit. I think if these comments were, released during while he was there in WWE, I don't know what they would have done, but they probably would have had to take action. So this was all going down like on Wednesday. As soon as the Kendrick announcement was made, that's when these comments surfaced from back in 2011 and then some more recent comments recently. And Tony Khan then, about an hour before Dynamite, tweets out that in light of some of the comments from Brian Kendrick, we've decided it's best just to pull him from the event for right now and to hold off any future plans with him until we investigate this or, dig into it a little bit deeper. And Kendrick was pulled from the show and replaced by Wheeler Yuta to face Moxley instead. So, to Brian Kendrick's credit, he did tweet out, what I felt was a genuine apology, even though I don't understand why people, every time they get busted like this, they say, I don't believe these things. I'm like, well, then why the fuck did you say them? Even if it's not a long time ago, a lot of people can use the excuse, it was 10 years ago and I was young and dumb and I was a stoner. The one video comment I saw where Kendrick was talking about the Holocaust and lizard people, he's like out on a beach in California. Probably got a fucking J, in his fingers right now. And he's just kind of sitting up, just like stoner conspiracy stuff, but really, really ridiculously stupid and offensive shit that was coming out of his mouth. So you can use the excuse, I was young and I was stupid, but really, if you're in your mid-40s, that just means you were in your mid-30s 10 years ago, and there's really no excuse for that. So I have no sympathy for anybody that says what you have to know how stupid you sound. You just must not care or something, but to have views like that and to be someone in the public eye, you ain't working, you're not working the cashier at Walmart where you can fucking believe that Biden is Trump in disguise, which a lot of people believe that. I think a Walmart cashier believing that ain't going to hurt too many people. But when you are somebody that is in the public eye or a public figure, or you're a celebrity, or you're an athlete, or you're anybody that has any sort of mainstream attention or public attention, and is any sort of public figure at all, like, I just would not be saying these crazy things. If I believed stupid shit, I would keep it to myself as to not affect my career. Sure, it's all protected in freedom of speech. You can believe in the flying spaghetti monster for all I care. I don't care, but you can't say things like he said and then expect there to be no consequences for that. So he apologized. I know he feels like an idiot. He said as much in his tweets. I'm ashamed. I'm disgusted with what I said. I don't feel this way. I'm like, well, you felt like this at one time. So I feel bad that it happened to him now, and I feel bad that the fans kind of made it happen, but I also don't feel bad that he fucking said these things and he's now paying the price for it. He's gotten away with it. He's been able to get work in wrestling with these comments being out there, and it's never really bit him in the ass. What goes around comes around. Even if it takes a hell of a lot longer to come around than normal, it still came around, and we see that all the time. Now in wrestling, same thing with Tessa Blanchard. Just watch what you say. Tessa made the mistake of tweeting out, hey, be kind to each other, and then floodgates open. Oh, you of all people is going to say that. So you just got to be careful. I would just be terrified. If I was young, if there was a camera rolling and following me around during my teens and 20s, I don't know if you guys would like me. I don't know if I would like myself, So, we all say dumb shit sometimes. We all, grow, we all evolve, we all mature, but that's just, I think, with everyday stuff. When I say dumb stuff, I don't mean that I believe in lizard people. I just say that I had maybe a view 10 years ago that I don't have now. It's not offensive or anything. It's just something that I personally disagree with myself on. That's all. I'm not saying that the Holocaust didn't happen and Jews are lizards. That's a little nuts. So I don't know what to make of it. I don't really care at the end of the day. Brian Kendrick wasn't going to be coming in to be working Hangman Page at the main event of Revolution. He was going to be there, probably another guy to come in, a veteran in the locker room, maybe give us some interesting matches on TV. I think Spanky and Mox would have been fun. But I don't think he was really there to do too much or be a huge part of the company anyway. And I think this initial signing was really just a one-shot deal. I don't even know if Kendrick had officially signed any contract with AEW yet. I don't think he did. So we'll see when these things blow over if they can bring him back in. But, kids, just, if you believe stupid shit, just keep your mouth shut, I guess is my best advice to you. But that whole situation this week was interesting. So we'll see if we ever see Brian Kendrick wrestle on television again. We might not. And apparently there's not really much of a relationship anymore either between him and Paul London. Paul London had liked some tweet that was kind of criticizing Kendrick for believing stupid shit. So I don't even think they're tight. And that's what will happen. I mean, if I had a friend that thought Jews were lizard people, I wouldn't talk to him anymore either. So I can understand people want to distance themselves from dumbasses. That's what you got to do. Hey, if you guys know any dumbasses, get the fuck away from them. They crazy. So anyway, we'll see what happens with Brian Kendrick down the road. I suppose we should talk about our friends at WWE and their 2021, I guess, final quarter earnings call came in just the other day where they reported all of their 2021 profits and earnings, and they set a company-wide record, best financial year in history of just over $1 billion. $1.095 billion in total revenue. This is up from $974 million from 2020. So they were up, just a sliver there, but record profits again. And every time we get 4 of these earnings call a year, and we say the same thing in every podcast. When you see these numbers and you hear these numbers, and you also see the way the company treats its talent and, treats long-running tenured employees that have been there behind the scenes, referees or whoever, put in years there, given their lives to the company, just tossed away like yesterday's garbage, because of budget cuts. What budgets are they cutting, for fuck's sake? They're bringing in more money than they ever have in their lives. And I was reading a bunch of random articles over on Fightful, and there has been some talk in the company that talent morale is reported to be at an all-time low, and that does not surprise me at all. Talent was telling a lot of their sources were informing them that it's just not a good place to be at the moment. It seems like WWE really only cares about a core 3 to 5 men and women there, and anybody else, it's just a fucking crapshoot, and they just treat you like crap. And I think a lot of people are just spinning their wheels. A lot of people are there just to get a paycheck out of it. They're not getting any sort of creative satisfaction out of their jobs at all. And when you think about what a big difference that is compared to back in the day during the Attitude Era, when WWE's locker room really had more of a team mentality because there was competition and they were trying to fight against WCW, and they were all working together to present the best product possible. And it's not like that anymore. You don't have the talent really sinking their teeth into their angles or anything anymore, because nothing is worth sinking your teeth into, with the, writers handing you your scripted promos and these dumb angles and these start and stops. There's no reason, if you're a talent behind the scenes, to really get excited about anything. And I think when we hear stories about morale being at an all-time low, you can believe that, because based on what we see on TV, look at poor Big E, who's now been quietly moved back over to SmackDown, put back with the New Day, as if his WWE title run never happened. Last night it kind of felt like he just had this sort of deflated vibe to him or something. And I think it's like that throughout a good portion of the company's talent roster right now, especially when you see all of this money coming in and how poorly WWE treats its talents with the people that it releases and things like that, and how drastically the priorities have changed in the company. And I say this every time they report these profits. I say, we're fucked as fans, because every time WWE reports numbers like this, explain to me where the motivation is to put on a better product. I mean, you would think at some point some executive in the company is going to have to raise his hand in a board meeting and say, hey guys, just a suggestion. If we're making this kind of money presenting the most absolute shit product humanly possible, imagine how much money we'll make if we fucking try. Imagine how much money we'll make if we actually attempt to not suck and we make an effort to not suck a bag of balls every Raw and every SmackDown. If we just try a little bit harder, and try to create a little bit more compelling storylines and TV, maybe, just maybe, be a little bit less formulaic, maybe, just maybe, take more than 5 seconds to write a promo or a segment, I think we can make even more money than we do now, and we wouldn't have to spend any more. Doesn't spend more to think. All you got to do is think harder, or maybe replace some of the writers with people that maybe know a little bit more about wrestling or understand the product a little bit more, or maybe a little bit more in touch with what the fans want. You got to also remember and take into account, though, a big portion of WWE's audience is 5-year-olds. And 5-year-olds probably don't recognize the same holes in continuity and the same formulaic bullshit, that maybe somebody in their 20s and 30s does. You do have to understand that the WWE's core audience doesn't care about a lot of the same shit we do, and they're too young to even notice the fucking difference anyway. WWE understands this. I promise you they do. But for the hardcores like us, that's why I think a lot of people are starting to gravitate towards AEW, because they are more of a pro wrestling show. WWE is a kid's show with wrestling elements thrown in. And I think that at the end of the day, you would think what I just laid out, somebody saying, hey, why don't we try a little bit harder? Because look at all the money we're making now. I think we can increase our profits by 25% if we just tried not to suck. But I don't even think WWE cares enough to do that. Their priorities are completely out of balance now. It amazes me that Vince gets so mad and tears up scripts and rewrites them when everything they do sucks. If Vince gets mad and tears up a script, all he's doing is tearing up one pile of shit and replacing it with another. What's the difference? It's shit either way. So I think that every time we're going to hear numbers like this every 3 months from WWE, that it's just going to, it's just going to prove that they really aren't going to have to do anything to provide a better or more creative product for us. They don't have to. And they're not gonna, because they don't give a shit. So we're screwed. We are doomed. I think I'm just going to stop paying attention to these earnings calls, because all they're going to do is piss me off. Nia Jax made some news yesterday She's an idiot. Of course, she believes that the only thing that she needs to protect against the vaccine is her body that God gave her. Fine, whatever. That's not even the dumbest part. The dumbest part was her just responding to tweets, and that idiot Braun Strowman chimed in on this shit too. These are people that don't believe that you need a vaccine because the Sky Wizard will protect you. Okay, that's dumb enough. But she then goes on to basically imply in her tweet, and this is the craziest part, that a lot of wrestlers, celebrities, people that she knows will just pay somebody to get a fake vaccination card. This is what she implied in the tweet. And I think Nia Jax is too stupid to understand that that could have some implications, because WWE is about to travel to Saudi Arabia. You cannot go to Saudi Arabia unless you are vaccinated both times and boosted. So at least now when we go to Crown Jewel or Saudi Arabia, you're going to know that every talent that you see in a ring is vaxxed and boosted. So at least know that. But there are still a lot of talents that aren't. And Nia Jax claims that there's a lot more than you think. Basically, she's making it sound like everybody's not vaxxed. No, you're a very small percentage of this stubborn freedom people that are just too damn stubborn to get the vaccine for whatever reason. So fine, it's your choice, whatever. But when Nia Jax implies that people are just paying people to get vaccination cards, that's fraud. That's a crime. That's a federal crime, you moron. So I think WWE, you would think, is going to have to release some sort of a statement saying, no, despite what idiots say after they leave the company, we are, any talent that is vaxxed and boosted is really vaxxed and boosted. Nobody's faking anything. I just think that's really irresponsible of even Nia Jax. I'm sure the company did her wrong, just like they did everybody wrong, but she's got a lot of seemingly friends there. I'm assuming people like Nia Jax, unless she was just despised in the locker room. You got a lot of friends over there that this could potentially create a problem for, especially if you're somebody that's known to have an anti-vax stance in the past. WWE might have to be like, hey, do you have a fake card or whatever? Or if these people are trying to pass this shit off by going over to Saudi Arabia or not. So my instinct tells me is that Nia Jax was exaggerating and embellishing a little bit, but kind of not a very smart thing to say, and which seems to be the theme with these people. If you don't want to get vaccinated, don't get vaccinated, even though I think you're dumb for not getting vaccinated. At the end of the day, I really don't care. But to sit there and insinuate and imply that people are paying for fake ones just to get, she is so terrible. I don't ever want to see her back in a WWE ring again. And when you talk about like natural immunization and having a strong immune system, one of the things that I know that along with the elderly, that the people that suffer the most from COVID are people who are old and people who are obese. So if I'm Nia Jax, I am taking it, but that's her call. Just to insinuate that people are paying for fake ones is really irresponsible and really stupid of her to tweet. So anyway, it's more funny, I guess, than anything else. Also, I read a small transcript transcribed by The Observer. Jade Cargill was a guest on Talk is Jericho. I have not listened to this, but we have brought up Jade Cargill in the past and talked about how if she ever did pass through the doors of WWE, much like Wardlow, how the company looked at these two and passed on them. How in the world did she slip through WWE's fingers and land in AEW? And she kind of elaborated on this now, saying that she actually did meet with WWE, had a tryout with them, and really didn't like basically the way they were towards her, how they acted towards her, or how they treated her. And she brought up how WWE basically questioned how bad she wanted it, and how true her motivation is. And they were very concerned that she had a 2-year-old kid. And they're like, well, what are you going to do about your kid? And she's like, well, I've got money and I've got a spouse and we can tutor her when we're on the road. And, I have a husband that can be there with her and it's fine. It's a non-issue. And they seem to be really harping on that, she said, to the point where even they told her, they said, this is your family now. Like if you work here, we're your family. And that stuff is so infuriating to me. If somebody told me that in WWE, I'm like, fuck you. The arrogance of this company to think that everybody who works there has to be 100% all in, and this family mentality when they treat you like anything but family. There is nobody in that company that is safe. The owner's fucking son got let go this week. So for these morons to actually think And I hate that talent actually buys into this. I'm sure there's a ton of talent there, probably young talent that are starstruck, that are maybe 19, 20, 21, 22, that spent the last 10 years loving the WWE product, cheering for their favorites. It was their dream to work there. These are the people WWE wants. These are the people WWE wants to bring in because they can fucking brainwash them. And they can get them to be so happy that they're there, that they're willing to do anything and be treated, poorly by a company, but they don't care because they're just happy to be there. They've been able to get away with that for many years in the past with, really being hard on the talent to make sure that, yes, they want it and make sure that they're putting in the work, make sure they're working hard, how those Tough Enough shows went, how hardcore everybody was on them, and the trainers and the Al Snows and the Tazes, treating these kids like shit, like it's a, Hard Knocks HBO special or some, football boot camp type of stuff. It's nuts, what they put you through, and they expect you to be 1,000,000% married and devoted to the company, but yet if you even sneeze wrong, they'll just let you go and throw you out no matter how many years you've been with them. So you hear stuff like that, and it's just so infuriating. So I'm glad that Jade Cargill told him to go take a hike and has found herself over in AEW where she's undefeated and a champion. I think Jade could have benefited from some of the training you would get in the PC, but I'm certainly glad that she either passed on WWE or they passed on her. I think at the end of the day, that's best, because when WWE really believes that for you to work there and you to sign a developmental contract means that they now own your life, you can go fuck yourself. Blows my mind that that's the way they think they can beat the people, but I guess that's wrestling. So anyway, I found the Jade Cargill comments on Talk is Jericho pretty interesting. Since we're about an hour and 20 minutes in, I'm just now finishing up the news. I want to backtrack a little bit to this week of TV and talk a little bit about Raw and Dynamite. Actually, not much about Raw at all. A couple of news tidbits about Dynamite, and then I want to talk about Rampage and SmackDown before we get out of here. First of all, Monday Night Raw last week pulled in a decent rating, 1.87. They opened up with a 2.1 million segment with Brock and Lashley and finished with 1.6 with Ronda Rousey, and averaging out, I guess, to 1.87. That's pretty decent, although it is right after the Royal Rumble. You would expect them to do a decent number right after the Royal Rumble. So that's kind of a promising number, although this week is going to suck. Raw is going to be on Sci-Fi this week, maybe even the week after. I can't remember how many weeks they're going to be over there because the Olympics is going on right now, so I guess that will be taking up time on the USA Network. So Raw will be on Sci-Fi, and if we think USA Raws are bad most of the time, imagine what a Sci-Fi Raw will be like. But there is a Seth Rollins and Riddle match advertised for Monday. That's probably going to be pretty decent, and we've got a Lita segment as well. But since it's on Sci-Fi, I will not even be looking at Raw this week. I will not turn it on. I will not have anything to do with Raw on Monday, so there will be no review or anything like that. I'm just not going to watch it. I'm going to take the night off from WWE Raw because I don't care what happens. This past week on Dynamite, we watched that together on Wednesday. Their rating came in a little lower, I think, than AEW would have hoped. Dynamite pulled in 954,000 viewers this week, I think, for a main event like MJF and Punk, one that was advertised and one that went about 45 minutes with a false finish, or a finish and then a second finish, and it was a really well-done match, really well-told story. That's kind of a disappointing number. If I'm AEW, I'm wanting a 1.2 million or something for a match like that. So I think that's a bit down from where they wanted it to be, but I still thought Dynamite was a great show. And I'm telling you, that main event was so interesting because we watched it here on YouTube and it was 13 past the hour. It was 6:13 when MJF started coming down to the ring. And I'm like, well, shit, we're either going to get a 47-minute match here or there's going to be some shenanigans. Maybe we get a debut. Maybe we get, I even had the idea of two matches. I was like, last time Punk had a match on Dynamite with Wardlow, they did a little nod to Bret Hart and Diesel from Survivor Series 95. When I saw that this match was starting so early, I thought maybe MJF would try to get out of the match like Jerry Lawler did at SummerSlam 93 and had Bret Hart face Doink first. And then if he beats Doink, then he gets Lawler. I thought maybe MJF might bring out Shawn Spears or somebody like that, make Punk face somebody, Punk beats him, and then MJF gets to face a weakened CM Punk. But that didn't happen. The entrances were made, the bell rang, and the match fucking started. Couldn't believe it. So I'm like, what's going to happen here? We got so much time left. There's no way this match is actually going to happen. We're going to have a break and then something else, and then they'll come out and do the match later. But they actually wrestled all this time, and they started doing the King of the Ring 93 finish at first, because after they, I guess maybe 20 minutes into the match, I guess it was 35 past the hour, and I forgot what happened. Punk got knocked out or something like that, and then MJF was able to choke Punk out. And then the referee realized that MJF was up to shenanigans and restarted the match. So once you had Punk technically lose and the match was restarted, I think most fans expected Punk to now come back and win. But we were talking about it during the watch along. I was like, it's not a given that Punk wins this. AEW is not exactly like WWE. They do things different sometimes. And I think as fans, we're probably expecting this scenario, but I think it would be fun if MJF won, especially after getting the better of Punk the week before. Remember when he sat on him, CM Punk style, sat right on the chest of CM Punk? Then he's going to basically beat him twice in the same match. I thought it was a long shot, but if it was something they did, holy shit, you talk about heat. And that's what they did. They brought out Wardlow. This was so well executed. I cannot give AEW, MJF, and CM Punk enough credit, because this match was old school. They didn't have to do, 450 gainers through 6 tables. They didn't have to go nuts out there. They kept things pretty simple with the wrestling in the ring and with the story that was being told. And then when the match was restarted after Punk passed out, MJF bails out. I think Punk might have hit him with a GTS. I forgot what it was. MJF bails out and lands on the outside of the ring by the entranceway, and CM Punk goes down after him, and that's when Wardlow comes down the aisle, and CM Punk and Wardlow have this face-to-face with MJF laying right between them. They've been teasing for the better part of a year. Wardlow finally getting fed up with MJF and the bad treatment that he's been receiving from MJF. We're all assuming and expecting at some point Wardlow to reach his breaking point with MJF and just turn on him and beat him up or something. And we thought that was happening right here when Wardlow looks right at CM Punk and then just steps aside, seemingly allowing Punk to finish off MJF. So Wardlow steps aside, but what he did that we did not see, nobody saw it until after the fact, which I give huge credit to Wardlow for, is that as he's stepping away from CM Punk, he kind of just casually and very subtly drops the diamond ring for MJF to pick up. I think Punk throws MJF back in the ring. Maxwell's got the diamond on now. Boom, he nails Punk with it. He goes down, covers him. Referee turns around, who now has been distracted by Wardlow, counts the 3, and MJF beats Punk twice in the same match with a brilliant little mini swerve with MJF and Wardlow. You thought that was going to be it. You thought Wardlow, after being shit on by MJF for a few too many times, he's just going to step aside and let Punk dispose of him. But they swerved us. He dropped the ring. MJF uses it. Him and Wardlow are still very tightly together, and he got not only 1, but 2 basically huge victories over CM Punk, because MJF is going to count that as 2 victories. So that was the right outcome. That was a great match with an excellent story. It was old school. It went a long time, a couple of commercial breaks, a couple of pitcher-in-pitchers, and it went nearly half of the show. I'd say 45% of the show was CM Punk versus MJF. That's awesome. Then that little twist ending, with the double outcome, I love, and I think the right guy won. That's who should have won that match. If you're going to beat CM Punk for the first time in 8 years, you don't need someone like Danielson or Moxley doing it. Let a pillar do it. Let a guy who's going to be the future do it. Let a Darby and MJF, a Sammy, or someone like that, get that victory against him. And MJF being able to do that He was the absolute, I believe, right guy to hand CM Punk his final loss, or his first loss, in AEW. Now, the big question is, do they run this back at Revolution? They probably will, and maybe Punk will win the blow-off. But Maxwell getting the first victory and basically beating him twice in the same night is going to do a lot for MJF's ego and going to provide a hell of a lot of good promo material. And I think Punk should probably, I guess, confront him on Wednesday and maybe propose a gimmick match at the pay-per-view. You would think it's going to have to be a gimmick match since, Wardlow's interference and all the shenanigans that went down. Maybe put this thing in a cage. The first match was pretty old school. Why can't the blow-off be old school? Just put it in a cage. I don't think you need a Mimosa Mayhem match, or a Pepsi Plunge match. Punk did the Pepsi Plunge for the first time in like 17 years or 15 years or something crazy like that in that match on Dynamite. So I don't think the gimmick match at Revolution, if they go that direction, needs to be too crazy, but it definitely should be a gimmick match of some kind. Don't you agree? The other cool thing we saw on Dynamite was Bryan Danielson pitching a partnership with Jon Moxley. Now, Moxley beat Wheeler Yuta, who was replacing Brian Kendrick, as we talked about earlier. And Danielson hit the ring and basically pitched an idea for the two of them to team up and mentor some of the young stars, mentor the Dante Martins or the Daniel Garcias and guys like that. And to me, and I think to all of us, this feels like it's just the beginning of a program between these two. It's very unlikely that Moxley will look at Danielson and go, that's a great idea. Let's shake hands and start that. Obviously, Moxley's going to reject it, and then that's going to lead to a match, and we're probably going to get Moxley and Danielson at Revolution. But now that Danielson brought it up, and it got us thinking about it, I'm like, why not? I'd actually be into that. Maybe it can be like a RK Bro type of situation where you expect it not to work, and it's going to implode on week one, but then something about it, kind of strikes a chord with the fans, and then it gets over, and then they run with it for a while. I actually thought that maybe during the MJF and Punk match, MJF would beat Punk, the Pinnacle would come out to beat Punk down, and then Danielson and Moxley would make the save. That would be cool. And then Punk, Moxley, and Danielson stand tall as AEW goes off the air. I don't know if AEW wants to go that direction of creating like an NWO or a Millionaires Club. Is that what it was called in TNA when they had like the Angle and Sting and all the stars in one faction? I don't know if they want to do that in AEW or not, but if they did, it sure would make for a cool visual. So we'll see if Danielson and Moxley actually do maybe form a brief partnership before splitting, or if they just go with Moxley rejecting it, Danielson getting mad, they fight, and boom, we've got our match at Revolution. We'll see where that goes. And the one bad part on the show I thought was the terrible Brandy and Dan Lambert segment, because Brandy comes out and she's acting all heelish on the crowd, but then Dan Lambert comes out to confront her. So the crowd basically is just telling them both to shut the fuck up. I don't think they wanted anything to do with either one of them speaking, and that was kind of funny, and that was a horrible segment. I think that was a bad booking decision. It's bad enough to have Lambert or Brandy out there, but have them both out there when the fans universally hate them both. I don't know who benefited from that segment. So that was one low point on Dynamite. Maybe that helped contribute to that shitty rating they got. I don't know. However, last night on Rampage was a lot of fun. Like I said, I always love when they were able to cram 4 matches into their hour-long Rampage show. Opened up with Adam Cole basically squashing Evil Uno, and he cut a very serious promo after, basically guaranteeing that he will one day be AEW champion. I said that even after he lost to Orange Cassidy. People think Adam Cole is buried because he lost to Orange Cassidy. If anything, that might be something to light a fire under him. And I don't consider Orange Cassidy to be Eugene or Santino Marella. He has comedy elements to his act, but Orange Cassidy can go. Orange Cassidy is an athlete. He might do shin kicks and have his hands in his pockets, but can you fucking do a nip up with your hands in your pockets? Try it. I'll wait. Are you on the ground yet? You're on the floor? Okay, let me know when you're on your back. Who's doing it? Are you doing it? It's hard, isn't it? So I don't believe that he's just some completely useless comedy wrestler. He's worked with some big names. Jericho put him over on pay-per-view. It's not that crazy that he would beat Adam Cole. I think it would be crazy if Marco Stunt beat Adam Cole, but maybe not Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy does have athletic ability. He can wrestle. He just has comedy aspects to his act. That's all. Doesn't really bother me. Plus, they did it in the non-sanctioned format, which means technically Adam Cole, which he mentioned in his promo, is undefeated, and he's going to use this as motivation to challenge for the championship. And since Paige has got the death match against Archer coming up, Paige is going to be free for Revolution, and I said that right after he lost to Orange Cassidy. I said Cole is going to be Paige's opponent at Revolution. So all the fans that thought that Adam Cole's career went to shit, I'm like, he's only been there for an hour and a half, and in the fucking first available pay-per-view, he's getting a title shot. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know why people consider, him to be buried when such a short time has gone by since he came into the company. He's going to get his opportunities. He will be champion. He'll be doing a lot with O'Reilly and Fish and the Bucks and Kenny and all this stuff down the road. He's got so much road ahead of him and so many possibilities of guys he can work with. The sky's the limit for Adam Cole, and I don't think anything is over because of one match, a match that, aside from the finish, I liked. I liked everything about Cole and Cassidy except for the finish. Finish was terrible. I'll grant you that. But everything else about it, I don't really have that much of a problem with it. So now Cole's pissed. He basically squashes Evil Uno, beats him in seconds with the last shot, cuts a promo, says he's more motivated than ever, and he's coming after the AEW title. Fine with me. So go, Cole, go. How cool would it be when Keith Lee comes in, inevitably, if we get Cole and Keith Lee again? Because Keith Lee ended Cole's long run, remember, for the NXT title. So maybe if Cole does become AEW champion one day, that can be his first challenger, would be Keith Lee. Might be fun. Sammy Guevara, pretty incredible TNT title defense against Isaiah Cassidy. He wins with a GTH. Not as good as the Cody match, but still pretty good. An excellent sell by Cassidy on the GTH, basically folding himself completely up. The match was fun because as Matt Hardy out there and Andrade, and they're arguing for most of the match, and then after it's over, they kind of both get in the ring, Hardy and Andrade kind of surrounding Sammy Guevara, who has both of the TNT titles with him. And he kind of realizes that he's surrounded, and that's when Darby Allin's music hits, and he comes out to make the save. But Andrade, I'm loving Andrade. He is funnier now to me than anything he's done so far in AEW because of his association with the Hardy family office and the merger of kind of the two entities there, and this idea in his head that Darby Allin is just some kid that works for Sting. So Darby comes in to make the save, but Andrade's not scared. He's happy. He's like, oh, this Darby is here to accept my offer. And so Jose tries to give Darby the contract right there in the ring so Darby can start working for Andrade. And he's like, basically like, oh, hell no. They powder everybody out. Everybody retreats, leaving just Darby and Sammy in the ring together. And Darby looks right at one of Sammy's championships. So we might be getting Darby and Guevara TNT title match really soon. Maybe even at Revolution. Take my money. Take it, take it, take it. You can have all of it. Darby, Sammy for a championship based on the matches these two guys have been having lately in the past few months in AEW. Hell yes, I will take some of that. Whether that's on Dynamite, Rampage, or Revolution, just give it to me. I don't care where it happens. Thunder Rosa took on a debuting Mercedes Martinez last night as well. Thunder Rosa wins via DQ when Martinez, I think, nailed her with a lead pipe or something and then continued to whip her ass on the outside of the ring. After the match, Martinez has an interview with Tony Schiavone where Britt Baker and Rebel and Jamie Hayter show up there, and Britt basically reveals that she was the one that paid Mercedes Martinez to take out Rosa. Mercedes said, I was paid to take out Thunder Rosa. That's what I did. Baker shows up, kind of throws a little shade at Jamie Hayter, who didn't get the job done, and says, some people can't do the job around here, so I paid you, but I didn't pay you for a DQ. Next time, get the job done. So I really like that Britt Baker, as champion, is trying to make like a preemptive strike here. She knows that Thunder Rosa is a huge threat to her championship, and she's going to have to face her soon. So she's trying to take her out early. I kind of like that. So we'll see where that goes when they'll make that exact match. I guess that might be our Revolution deal between those two, but I like it. I like it a lot. And we had a fantastic main event for the FTW title. Ricky Starks actually put this title on the line against Jay Lethal. And what I liked the most about this was the finish. Jay Lethal, I can't believe, I'm sure maybe somebody's countered his move like this before. I've just never seen it done. But Jay goes for his lethal injection move, which is kind of like a handspring type of deal. But when he goes to rotate, Starks is able to counter him in perfect Rochambeau position and nails him for the finish. The crowd in the front row, hands on their heads. It was awesome. Great finish. Really fun match there. And Ricky Starks, he's for real, man. I think Ricky Starks is a pillar, to be honest with you. I think can you have 5 pillars? Sure. All that means is extra support, right? You can have like a middle pillar, one on each corner and then the middle. So maybe Britt can be in the middle, but then we'll add Starks along with Darby and Guevara and Jungle. And we'll have ourselves 5 strong pillars in AEW. That was a fun-ass match and big win for Ricky Starks. Going to wrap up things here in the next about 20 minutes, but we still have time to get into a little bit of SmackDown. Now, I was working last night, and you guys were keeping me updated on SmackDown, and I heard a lot of the same thing from a lot of people, and that is that not a ton happened on SmackDown last night. Just a really kind of empty show aside from the 2 big announcements they had. So the big one was, of course, Roman and Goldberg. So Roman Reigns comes to the ring with the Usos and with Paul Heyman. Now, remember, this is the first time we've seen Paul, Heyman, and Roman together since Royal Rumble last Saturday. 1 week ago today was when Heyman realigned himself with Roman Reigns. But in the promo last night, Heyman revealed to us that there was no grand plan. There was no conspiracy. There was no ruse. I think we were all expecting the firing of Paul Heyman to be a ruse, and I was the one that pointed out that Heyman ate a Superman punch, but if you notice, he never got squashed with the steel chair. Brock came out in time to save him from that, and I thought maybe that was part of the ruse, them banking on the fact that Roman would not have to brain Heyman because Brock would save him. Heyman would just be willing to eat a Superman punch to make everything as convincing as possible. But Heyman revealed that it was never a conspiracy at all, that he made a mistake and was fired by Roman Reigns. He aligned himself with Brock and everything was fine until on Monday, during, I think, the Brock and Lashley confrontation, Brock said, or prior to that, excuse me, when Brock had mentioned that he wants title for title against Roman at WrestleMania. And that made Paul Heyman rethink things to where he basically says, I realized at that moment that I was no longer protecting Roman from Brock, but I needed to protect Brock from Roman. This was his explanation. So when Roman came out during Brock's match and did what he did, he offered me his hand, in friendship and all of that. And that's when I passed the belt to him. So basically Heyman said that he made the decision to dump Brock and realign with Roman during the Brock Lesnar and Lashley match at the Royal Rumble, instead of what we assumed that this whole thing was some elaborate grand plan to screw over Brock Lesnar. So I'm not sure if I really liked Heyman's explanation. I'm glad that they at least explained it, but it wasn't the way I was expecting them to. At the end of the day, I don't care. It doesn't matter what, it's still the same destination. I expected that Heyman should remain with Roman. I think Heyman is better with him right now. Brock by himself is more entertaining than I ever thought Brock could be, and I don't really think he needs to be with Heyman right now. So this is the right pairing. Everybody, I believe, is with who they should be with. So this prompts Goldberg to come out. Heyman says something, or Roman says something on the mic that prompts out Goldberg. He returns. This was rumored and reported a couple of days before that Goldberg is in fact going to be in Saudi Arabia, and he likely will challenge Roman Reigns. We talked about this past Monday, and we might have even talked about it on Wednesday during the Dynamite watch along, that Goldberg coming back, you guys all know, is something that I hate. I want nothing to do with him. He has way overstayed his welcome now, 6 years after the fact, 5 years after the fact. I was actually fine with him coming back at Survivor Series that year and beating Brock Lesnar in like 10 seconds. And that little run he had with the title was fast. He beat Kevin Owens, went into WrestleMania, and gave Brock his victory back and the championship, and then cut a nice little temporary farewell speech the next night on Raw, where his weird little kid took his shirt off and the whole deal. I thought that was nice. I was like, you know what? For somebody who's not a big Goldberg fan like me, I thought everything they did there was pulled off nearly to perfection. A lot of fans were pissed about the Goldberg-Brock squash at Survivor Series, but I didn't care. As long as it meant Goldberg doing the favor back to Brock, Brock winning the title, and Goldberg going away, I thought everything was fine, and I thought it made up for the terrible run that Goldberg had in 2003 and 2004. To me, someone who doesn't even like Goldberg, I thought that was all really well done, and to me, it gave me closure. It gave me closure on Goldberg's career, somebody that, because I was really on WWE's side during the Monday Night Wars, it was hard for me to really appreciate Goldberg, and then when he was in 2003 and 4, and he had the deals with Triple H and the issues there, and then the clusterfuck with Brock at WrestleMania 20 when they were both leaving, it made me dislike him even more. And then every interview he was in, he came off like such an asshole. And I just never liked Goldberg, ever. Didn't like him personally or professionally. Wanted very little to do with the guy. So when he came back in 16 and 17, when he was done and he had that speech on Raw, I even remember he told the crowd, he said something to the audience that really made me respect him. And they were starting to be assholes. And he's like, hey man, I'm about to pour my guts out here. Will you just give me a fucking second before you act like cunts? I loved that, because he was being real, and to the fans' credit, they actually listened to him. And they're like, yeah, maybe we're kind of being jerks. And they let him say his piece. Talked about his family, brought his kid in the ring, like I said, still don't understand why the shirt had to come off. I'll always laugh at that. And, hugged his wife after. And I was like, that was all really nice. I stand corrected. Goldberg, I'm glad you came back. I'm glad that you were able to kind of put a nice little cherry on top of your career and give not only yourself, but a lot of us fans closure on all of this. But then he had to come back. WWE had to bring him back, pay him to keep coming back. Then he won the championship again, beating The Fiend. And I was just so over it. And I want nothing to do with the guy. I don't need him here. But as we said in the last episode, if he's going to come in, which he's going to, we can't stop that. At least bring him in Saudi Arabia on a show that deep down nobody really cares about. If it was up to the fans, we wouldn't be going over there at all. So at least put him there because they seem to be into that nostalgia stuff. They requested Yokozuna worked a match, for the first one. He's been dead for 20 years. So Goldberg coming in and working in Saudi Arabia would be okay. I just don't want him to winning championships there. But he's got a championship match against Roman Reigns, and this is a match that we didn't get at WrestleMania a couple of years ago, and I always felt like that year they were making the match specifically for Roman to have a victory over Goldberg, for that to be on Roman Reigns' legacy and his resume. So I feel like that's all they're doing here. So if they're going to bring Goldberg in, at least it's in Saudi Arabia, and at least it's to lose. So I at least have to silver lining this thing and say, I'm not happy with Goldberg being there. I don't want him there, but at least it's Saudi Arabia. The big question now is, does he work WrestleMania? I'm assuming that he's going to go into Saudi Arabia and get beat by Roman Reigns. That's what we're all assuming, but what if he wins? What if Brock Lesnar, think about this, what did Roman do to Brock? Roman cost Brock the title at Royal Rumble. What if Brock pays him back? What if Brock jumps in the ring and helps Goldberg beat Roman Reigns for the championship? Now, this match will either happen before or after Brock's participation in the Elimination Chamber in Saudi Arabia. So maybe it happens before. Maybe it's an undercard match. Brock hits the ring, smashes Roman Reigns with the belt, hands the belt over, or lets the referee count the 3, and then presents the title to his buddy Goldberg. And then Brock goes into the Elimination Chamber and wins the title. Then what does he do? Then it's like reversed. Then does Roman have to challenge Brock? So then maybe Roman is like, I'm going to take your belt since you took mine. I don't know. You could do that, but it feels like Brock is going to be winning that title in the chamber, and they're going to be doing title versus title. That, I guess, really doesn't matter too much. My main concern is that Goldberg does not fly out of Saudi Arabia as a champion. If that happens, I'm going to sell all of my possessions, move into a Ford Focus, and change my name to Kanye. Can't handle it. So lots of possibilities, though. You got to think about that Rumble stuff, given how Brock lost the title to Lashley. Who's to say Roman can't do the same thing? But I'll tell you what, man, if Goldberg is the guy to end that 500-plus day run, I will be so bummed out. And then that's another likelihood we have to come to terms with, is that, Roman getting this long run, the guy that's probably going to end it is going to be Brock Lesnar, which is why I'm happy, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, that Charlotte is the one being challenged by Ronda Rousey. Because if Ronda challenged Becky, you know what that means? that means there's a really good possibility that Brock and Ronda could walk away with all the titles. They still could do something like that between now and then. Ronda has said that she wants both Becky and Charlotte. She's just going to be challenging Charlotte first. But what if they do something on the women's side where they get another title for title match? And what if we are faced with a situation to where Brock and Ronda Rousey both unify all the titles at WrestleMania? We don't want that. So I am glad that at least with Becky's run, because Roman's got a 500-day run that's going to come to an end. So if Brock is the one to end that, I would hate it if Ronda was the one to end Becky's. Because Becky's got like a 3-year run going, and Roman Reigns has got 500 days plus. If Brock and Ronda are the two that end those runs, don't you agree that that would be disappointing? Wouldn't you want at least one of those runs to be ended by someone that's a current full-time roster member with many years of wrestling ahead of them? That's why I think they have got to pay off the Bianca Belair, Becky Lynch stuff. I'm hoping that Becky will beat Lita at Elimination Chamber and something will happen on TV that will give Bianca Belair a championship match at WrestleMania, and she will beat Becky clean for the title. At least that gives us something, because if Roman and Brock are going to be fighting for 2 championships and Ronda is going to be fighting for another, we need some sort of star of the future to do something on this show. That's why I think Bianca Belair is a great candidate and should be the one to go in and face Becky Lynch for the title. Not Bayley, not Asuka. You can bring them back and not Alexa Bliss. They can all do stuff. They can all have matches. They can all challenge for the title after WrestleMania, even before WrestleMania if somebody comes back. But I really think that based on the way the WrestleMania card is shaping up, that Bianca Belair should be beating Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. Let's hope that that happens. But they could throw a lot of twists at us. If they do bring an Asuka back, if they do bring a Bayley back, they could get involved. Sasha Banks, I thought, was maybe planning to work with Charlotte at WrestleMania. That seems to obviously be changing now too. So they could add and change some stuff around and maybe even still find a way to do some sort of champion versus champion match at WrestleMania, or maybe even do that 3-way again with Ronda and Becky and Charlotte. But let's hope not. Let's just hope it's Charlotte and Ronda and Becky can drop that title to someone like Bianca Belair. Speaking of Charlotte, her promo ended the show. By the way, did I even finish up the Roman Reigns Goldberg stuff? By the way, Roman promo, Goldberg comes out, acknowledges Roman as his next victim, makes the match at Chamber, blah, blah, blah. So that match is set. Then in the main event was when we had Charlotte coming out to cut her promo. Ronda Rousey comes out to confront her. Charlotte is basically assuming that Ronda is going to face Becky. That's why I'm also wondering if there's still a way to wiggle Becky's way in there and make this some sort of title for title deal. I really hope not. I don't think so, but they keep mentioning it, so maybe it could still happen. Charlotte is so convinced that Becky is going to be the one challenged by Ronda that she's even starting to think about who her own WrestleMania opponent is going to be, and she's going to be able to pick her own opponent. So Charlotte thinks that she's going to pick her own opponent for WrestleMania. Ronda comes out, says not so fast. She says, you're one of many that I owe a ass whipping to, and you're not special, you're just first. I'll see you at WrestleMania. So Ronda officially challenges Charlotte, and honestly, that's the right call too. I don't mind it. Obviously, you got to do Ronda and Becky again at some point, but I really don't want to see Bianca Belair cast aside for this bullshit. So I'm glad that Ronda is challenging Charlotte. I was at Survivor Series in 2018. They had a hell of a match, and I think they'll have another great match and another, like I said, just like with the Goldberg Saudi Arabia stuff, I'm trying to silver lining this thing here. Neither one of these women are really particularly well liked. Charlotte is always hated. And Ronda, a lot of people have been complaining since she's been back that she feels like she's going through the motions. She doesn't seem like she gives a shit about professional wrestling, and that's going to rub a lot of fans the wrong way. So think about that. You have two women that nobody gives a fuck about, so they're just going to cancel each other out. There should be no reason for any fan to be mad at the outcome here, no matter what it is. Because when you think about it, it's good either way. A Charlotte loss means a Charlotte loss. And a Charlotte loss usually means happy fans. A Charlotte win usually means angry fans because they worry that she's taking a spot away or holding people down or burying them. But this is Ronda Rousey. If she beats Ronda Rousey, is she burying Ronda Rousey? Is she holding Ronda Rousey down? No. Fans don't even like Ronda Rousey because they say she doesn't give a shit about wrestling and she's only there because she's contractually obligated to. So it feels like no matter what happens here at WrestleMania between Charlotte and Rousey, the fans really have no business complaining. You got no business bitching about any outcome that we get because I think it's kind of good either way. If Ronda loses, good. At least WWE didn't sacrifice their best women's wrestler ever to a UFC fighter. And then if Ronda loses, good. She didn't deserve to win anyway. So I think the fans should be happy either way there, regardless of what Charlotte and Ronda do at WrestleMania. Also, hopefully they will not change anything up. Now, Sonya Deville was also in the ring for this. Once Ronda made it known that she was going to challenge Charlotte, I guess Charlotte kind of leaves, and then Sonya gets in Ronda's face and tells her that she's in charge, and Ronda takes her down with the arm bar and threatens to break it or whatnot. So she took down Sonya Deville, which is kind of funny. I would really like to see Ronda and Shayna Baszler form some sort of an alliance as well. We saw them team up briefly in the Royal Rumble, so that could be a lot of fun. And that is our WrestleMania women's title match, or SmackDown women's title match for WrestleMania. Charlotte against Ronda Rousey, and we're going to have Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, and Becky Lynch will be defending against somebody. So the card is starting to come together. In terms of the rest of SmackDown last night, not much. Drew McIntyre cut a promo where he kind of got some revenge on Madcap Moss and Baron Corbin. He wants Baron Corbin. Looks like they're going to be going with McIntyre and Corbin at WrestleMania. But before that, we got 8 weeks of this shit between these fucking three guys, and they made the match official for Elimination Chamber, Drew McIntyre against Madcap Moss. Drew held him off with a sword last night, made him tell some jokes, really stupid. And now McIntyre, who, a year ago was WWE champion and going into WrestleMania to defend that title, is now working with Madcap Moss. Wow. Sami Zayn approached Sonya and Adam last night about his Intercontinental title shot that he earned the right to weeks and weeks ago. And Sonya says that he will be getting that shot in 2 weeks against Nakamura. They also showed the replay of the Jackass premiere. That was fun stuff. And they even said that they're going to invite Johnny Knoxville to the Intercontinental title match in a couple of weeks. So are we going to get Sami Zayn against Johnny Knoxville at WrestleMania? I think we are. So we'll keep our eye on that. Can Knoxville even work? He's been injured so many times. How much can Knoxville really do? Maybe it's a tag team match. Maybe Knoxville gets himself a tag team partner, and it's kind of like the Mickey Rourke situation from a couple of years ago or whatever, and he's just at ringside. I don't know, but he might actually get in the ring, and he could actually be working a match against Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. That's pretty interesting. We had Nakamura defeating Jinder Mahal in a one-on-one match. Also, Sonya makes Naomi versus Charlotte for the title next week. So we've got Sami challenging Nakamura in 2 weeks, and we've got Sonya challenging Charlotte next week. So next week it's going to be a double show. So I think next week they're taping 2 shows is what they're doing, and then the following one. So Sami's title shot for the IC title will actually be on that taped SmackDown, I believe. So we should know if he winds up winning the title ahead of time or not. One thing we know for sure, Sami ain't going to Saudi Arabia. And that just basically leaves us. I don't want to talk about anything else on SmackDown. It was completely pointless. Although the New Day did defeat Los Lotharios as well. But like I said, Big E's been just quietly moved to SmackDown, reunited with the New Day, and like his WWE title run never happened. Very strange. Last thing I want to mention before I get out of here is the Elimination Chamber card. 5 matches now is what we've got for this thing. I just mentioned Madcap Moss against Drew McIntyre a minute ago. We've also got the Usos defending the SmackDown tag team titles against the Viking Raiders. Did I read that right? Becky defending the Raw Women's title against Lita. Roman, of course, defending the Universal title against Bill Goldberg. And Lashley set to defend the WWE title in the Chamber. I don't have the Chamber participants written down, but I believe it's Brock, Riddle, Seth, and Theory, correct? And that's what we've got for the Chamber. So I have made it through my notes. Let me cruise over here and answer any last remaining Super Chats. And then I'm going to have to be getting out of here because I got work to do tonight. Yeah, Mickey Rourke was a decade ago. I remember that. It was 2009, 12, 13 years ago now that Mickey Rourke stuff was. That's amazing. Yeah, Reese, I saw that. Ronda and Sonya should have a battle at some point, and we should get all the MMA girls involved. You know, Shayna, Sonya, and Ronda. They should form a faction, is what they should do, not be against each other. Oh, WWE wants Ronda versus Becky for next year's WrestleMania, so they really going to hold that off a whole year? And another thing too is, if you noticed, Ronda is on SmackDown. If Brock, Brock probably is going to win. If Brock wins the WWE title, at least that will keep him on Raw. But if he doesn't win the title in the Elimination Chamber, that means Lashley is still champion, and Lashley will be facing somebody for the title at WrestleMania. And if that's what they do, that means, I guess, the two main events will both be SmackDown matches. Because wouldn't you think that Charlotte and Rousey might main event night 1, and then Roman and Brock will main event night 2? That means both of their top main events are SmackDown angles. But if Brock is world champion, that could get Roman to Raw for a couple of episodes in the build, and that would really start muddying up the waters of the brand split even more than they're already muddied up. So, maybe that could be the beginning of the whole thing just going away. I don't know. But it is kind of interesting that it seems like their two top matches, at least for right now, for WrestleMania, are both SmackDown matches. Not sure how that's going to go down in the end either with the fans. Good to see Population 420 in here. Casey Dare and Muhammad, a whole bunch of other guys. Alex Bryant, Barry's in the house. JP Reckless, Dylan, what's up? All you guys that have come in a little past the time for me to do shout-outs, I appreciate that. Want to say hello to Nathan Hansen, popping in with a couple of super chats. $2 from you twice. First one says, when do you realistically give MJF the title? I don't know. MJF I initially had next in line after Hangman Page, but I also think MJF is... he's an attraction, man. Even his win-loss record, he hasn't wrestled like a ton of matches. So he's a guy that I think could survive maybe a little bit longer than most without the championship because he's so good. And if you give him fun feuds and angles like the one he's currently doing with CM Punk, I'm not even thinking about the championship. But when you put wins under your belt like CM Punk, it's going to be hard to ignore that for too long. So, it depends on what they do at Revolution. I think maybe Page works against Adam Cole and maybe beats him. I think if Page and Cole work right away, Page should win. If Adam Page and Adam Cole work down the line, then I think Cole should win. But I think Page's run should go on for a little while longer, and MJF would be the perfect guy. Wow, Nathan, congrats, man. I thought you were going to say today is your 100th birthday. I'm like, you don't look a day over 99. But, dude, congratulations, man. 100th day of sobriety. You should be proud of yourself. I think I've never had issues with that type of addiction, but I would assume the first 100 are probably the hardest, correct? Like the detoxing period and just, kind of getting used to it. That's a very, very hard hill to climb, I would imagine, and we're all proud of you, Nathan. Good job. Excellent job. Well, why Becky next year? What difference does it make? Well, you're going to have to do Becky and Ronda. You can't not do that. It just depends on when they do it. I think next year a bit far. I think Becky and Ronda could just be done at SummerSlam, to be honest, if they wanted to do it. You don't have to do it at WrestleMania. So, yeah, I'm not set on that, but I do believe that Becky and Ronda absolutely has to happen. Rodrigo, man, if Lashley drops that belt in the chamber, what does he do at Mania? I don't know. That's the one downfall to having title for title, Roman and Brock, is what do you do with everybody else? I don't know. So that a big part of me hopes that Brock and Roman is just for one belt, but the way they keep mentioning title for title feels like that's the direction we're going. And Brock could be coming out of the chamber with the championship, which I said, in a lot of ways you can at least appreciate that WWE at least knew enough to give Lashley a victory over Brock first before doing that. That way it's not a complete burial of Lashley, but, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Anywho, it is the top of the hour. I've got to get out of here now. I got to go to work and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me this afternoon. I will get this audio thrown up on the website for download here shortly, so you can listen to it in audio form if you so choose. Don't forget to join us tomorrow night for WrestleMania 10. We're going to watch the whole thing together at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, and it should be a kick-ass effing time. So you guys have a great rest of your Saturday. Enjoy your evening, enjoy your weekend, and I'll catch you